When it comes to buying a house overseas, there is a process. Every country has its own. There are written rules and there are unwritten rules. Every place has a unique culture. Things that are accepted and things that aren't. We bought a house in France. In the buying process, we had to figure out for ourselves. One of the first surprises we discovered is that the French property market moves slow. There are fewer buyers, sales typically take longer, and as a result, prices are almost always inflated. Negotiation is normal. It's not unusual for people to secure homes for 10, 15, sometimes even 20% below the asking price. So negotiate, but know when to stop. We were able to agree upon a price for around 15% below the asking price, and that made this project possible. After negotiating a steal of a price, you would think sealing a deal would come easy, but when your life savings are on the table, something strange happens. It's crazy how quickly excitement can turn into fear. One moment you picture yourself living out your dreams, and the next you're rehearsing the worst case scenario. It's important to understand that this is just how we're wired as humans. It isn't a sign that something is wrong, it's a sign that something matters. It's inevitable and it's part of the process. So recognize it when it rises, learn to control it, and when the time is right, move straight through it. Because if you don't, it won't just slow you down, it'll stop you in your tracks. A couple of days after the negotiation, the estate agent sent us a document, known in France as the fiche acquéreur, which is a buyer's information form used in French real estate, which can be signed online. Think of it as a paper handshake between the buyer and the estate agent. Once we sealed the deal, it was time to find out what we were getting ourselves into. Luckily, time was on our side and a place in the sun was holding a convention near our hometown. So we attended and soaked up as much information as possible. I won't go into too much detail about this event, but just know there is an abundance of information, experts and businesses that are there to help and provide solutions to whatever problems you might have when it comes to making a move to another country. Whilst there, we did a cheeky little audition tape for a place in the sun, so if there's any producers out there. A couple of days later, the estate agent sent over an insanely detailed 180-page diagnostic report, known in France as
Certificat de superficie de la partie privative.
Basically, for those in the UK, it's a survey report on steroids. Floor plans, electricity reports, drainage reports, heating efficiency, property history, earthquake risks, flooding risks. I am not joking. The French do not mess around when it comes to paperwork. The problem was, we couldn't read a word of French. But again, timing was on our side. In the past, decoding this document could have taken months, if not years. But thanks to AI, we translated entire sections in seconds. And suddenly, this impossible barrier became manageable. And more importantly, comprehensible. It made buying property abroad accessible in ways that previous generations haven't had access to. And it removed a lot of the doubt about buying property abroad. Once we had a rough understanding of the document and confidence that the house wasn't going to collapse on the day we moved in, it was time to meet the notaire. I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit skeptical. In my head, I was gearing up to meet a solicitor, which is the closest comparison to the legal representative who deals with the paperwork in the United Kingdom. But there's a difference. In the UK, each the buyer and the seller have a solicitor, both working in their corner, pulling on opposite directions. In France, however, there is just one single, neutral legal expert who works for both sides to make sure everything is fair, legal and transparent. Therefore, the notaire has your best interest at heart, and knowing this has removed so much doubt. Thankfully, our estate agent put us in contact with a bilingual notaire, and she spoke perfect English. We joined the video call, documents open, not quite knowing what we were about to uncover. Page by page, our notaire walked us through the report, translating, explaining, highlighting things that mattered and answering any questions that we had. Halfway down the document, she stopped. Buried deep within that page was a very important sentence. The sentence stated that the property was classified as a commercial property, which meant, legally, we couldn't use it as a short-term rental. The notaire uncovered that in the past, the seller had in fact applied for the home to be reclassified as a domestic property. And there we were, stuck between two outcomes. If the property had in fact been reclassified, then we moved forward. And if not, this was the end of the road. I didn't notice it at the time, but I realized this meant a lot more than just owning a French home. This was about freedom, and buying a house and setting it up as a short-term rental was putting us one step closer. Thankfully, the universe had a plan for us. Turns out, the seller's application to have the house reclassified had in fact been accepted, and they had the paperwork to back it up. It was back on, but now the stakes were higher. This was no longer about the dream of living in France. This was about freedom. And the next step to get there required a promise. With our next trip to Carcassonne, we planned to kill two birds with one stone. We had to sign the first act in person. We booked another viewing for the property, and we took with us an extra pair of eyes. It's important to gather other people's perspectives. Often they can spot things you're blind to, especially when you're jaded by excitement. We learnt a lot through this experience, but it was Hannah's mum's reaction that told me everything I needed to know about whether or not I was making the right decision. And this made scribbling our signature on the promise de vente a whole lot easier. So we just signed the promise de vente. I am now officially a homeowner. Well, not officially, give it a couple of months. Never signed over to buy a house before, but I must admit the notaire was very knowledgeable. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Wig shop, or it's a hairdresser's, or it's so pretty.
Squirrel. Promise de vente translates to promise of sale. Once signed, the buyer and seller have made an agreement and they cannot back out of the sale. If you break the promise, you are hit with a heavy fine. After signing the promise, we put down a substantial deposit and paid the notaire fees. From that moment on, there was no turning back. When buying a house in France, the notaire's fees should not be an afterthought. They can cost as much as 8% depending on the age of the house. So don't get caught off guard, plan this into your budget. With all the paperwork signed and costs covered, this called for celebrations. The next few weeks were a waiting game. As we counted down the days, we put together a plan for when we landed. Finally, the day came. The moment we stepped off the plane, it went from 0 to 100. We had just a day to do everything. Pick up the rental van, drive to IKEA, grab the essentials, collect a couple of sofas we found on Facebook Marketplace, and somehow make it back in time for the final signing to collect the keys.
It feels real now because we've got through all of the checks, all of the hurdles, all of the barriers. The next one is literally getting the keys for the house, and then that's it. We've done. We've complete the mission, the quest.
We were racing against the clock. Naturally, a few obstacles stood in the way. It was my first time driving manual since passing my test, and I was driving on the wrong side of the road.
I've got manual, I've got gears, I'm not used to this shit, man.
Big van, narrow roads, a lot of adrenaline. Once again, time was on our side, and in classic French style, we arrived 5 minutes late. Finally, we had the keys to our new French home. Now, it was time for the fun to begin.
It's a wrap.
I was just saying to Hannah before, not to get off philosophical and shit, but it feels like real life